Good evening, chosen ones. Welcome to Virtual Beelzebub TV. I'm your host, Beelzebub, and welcome back to the pit. So today, I thought I'd do another improvised storytelling video, and I was inspired by this image of a butler carrying a bow and arrow and a sword. And the first thing that jumped in my mind is like, what if this guy existed in the modern era? And for some reason, it inspired me to come up with a story. So I've already got a concept, a basic concept laid out. And I know it's usually full improv, but I have something slightly prepared this time, so hopefully it'll go smoothly. So, what time period do I want to put this in? Maybe not modern day. Let's say 1950s, right? It's a post-World War II economic miracle. People are getting homes for the first time. GI bills are getting sent out. Money is flowing freely at this point in time. And we have this guy named Todd. Now, Todd, his father was a war profiteer, and through the manufacture of weapons and other military-based equipment, found himself with a very substantial fortune. However, he died under mysterious circumstances in a car accident on a rainy bridge on a one fateful night, and left his entire fortune to his mostly worthless son Todd. Now, Todd's kind of a lazy son of a bitch. He was spoiled his whole life, never had to want for anything, and now that he has inherited his father's wealth, he still doesn't need to work. He's just kind of a lazy fuckhead, but he's aware that his father's inheritance will not last forever. So, he actively, once he hears about this, uses his father's name and reputation to go get himself a job. And he, for the first time in his life, he's got to, like, really, put himself to work, learn some skills. He decides to get into business and stock trading and a bunch of other, like, white collar work. And he really devotes a lot of time, sometimes pulling 60-hour work weeks. Like, he really turns his life around through hard work and dedication. But he's also inherited a lot of his father's shit that he wants to keep in good repair. One of which is a a very large mansion. And with the mansion comes two twin brothers who serve as butlers. Their names are Salt and Vinegar. And so when he inherits his father's mansion, he inherits these two butlers. And he doesn't really know what to do with them. Because, when he was a kid, he'd make them do a whole bunch of, inane shit just to amuse himself. Do this, do that, do a cartwheel to amuse me, whatever. But now he's a grown man with a full-time job. He's hardly ever even home. And these butlers, basically all they do is, keep the house looking proper, do the dishes and the cooking and whatnot. Because, to be fair, when you're coming home from a 60-hour work week, from a high-end stock trading business job, you don't have the energy to cook and clean. So it's kind of nice to have these two twins looking after him. And one of the things he always thought was weird is that they both carried rapiers with them at all times. Even though it's the 1950s, they're going to carry something to, like, defend themselves with. You'd think it'd be like a gun or something. But no, rapiers. And they're also proficient archers, although they typically don't wear their bow and arrow. Just something of a hobby of theirs. And one thing he's always noticed since he was a kid, but never gave much thought, is just how overwhelmingly, like, he always, you would expect a butler to be serious and professional and efficient. It kind of, comes with the territory. But he was always a little unsettled by just how severe and intense these two twins were, and how they would kind of look at each other, trade zero words, and just sort of instantly communicate certain information. And now that he is, his father isn't ordering them around and taking up most of their time, and the fact that he's a grown adult and he's paying more attention now, he just starts picking up on little things that they do that aren't as normal as he used to interpret them. The fact that they'll sometimes just vanish when he needs them, that's not very butler-like. A butler is supposed to be on demand, and sometimes these dudes are just, gone for several hours, even though they're supposed to be on the clock. But he's like, okay, it's mostly just me. They're probably just, sneaking out to go have some fun or whatever. So he tries not to think about it too much, but the more time he spends alone in this house, his brothers and sisters have all moved out and done their own thing. His mom is no longer in the picture. His dad's dead. He just got this great big house that used to be full of people and distractions, and the butlers were always actively serving something and always actively doing something, and he'd only ever call on them if he needed something or to amuse himself. He starts to really get to know these guys, yet at the same time not get to know anything about them at all. And he starts to feel increasingly more uncomfortable around them. Just how there's literally no one in this house but these three people, yet they refuse to tell him anything about themselves. They refuse to let down their guard. They just refuse to ever just relax, yet they're still mysteriously disappearing for hours and hours on end. The one unprofessional thing that they do. He tries not to think about it too much. Todd is, he's got better things to worry about. It's just something that bugs him in the back of his mind. Now, one of the things about Todd being a professional stock trader, putting in these 60-hour work weeks, he is, as soon as he gets the job, he gets quite a few lucky breaks. He's, every stock he's shorted, gambling that the stocks would dip, those stocks dip drastically. Anything he bets that will succeed, suddenly the stock price skyrockets. Like every call he makes, just by pure happenstance, just sort of takes off in the exact direction that he needs it to. And everyone thinks he's some sort of a genius. Others think he's clairvoyant. He gets investigated for insider trading, but is found not guilty. There's just no way that this dude is making all the right calls every single time. And so he comes home from another day at work, and he tells his butlers about what his plans are, what he's going to invest in, what his plan, where his mind's at. And he realizes, I'm doing all the talking, and these butlers are just always listening to him extremely seriously every time he talks about business. And they take, and sometimes they'll even he'll just be making a random complaint or have a random spurious thought off the top of his head, and they'll write it down. And he's like, why are these guys taking me complaining about work so goddamn seriously? So he decides to say something that appears offhanded but is actually very intentional. He offhandedly mentions that he really needs that he's going to short sell. He's going to gamble against the most famous fashion company. Let's say it's something on the level of Gucci or Prada. These companies that have been consistently churning out massive products as a luxury item in a time where a lot of people have a lot of money. People are buying houses for the first time. Stay-at-home wives buying Gucci and Prada in upper middle class and high class suburbia. It's all the rage. Keeping up with the Joneses is starting to become a thing. She's like, there's absolutely no way that these companies are going to crash. There's no way in hell. But he mentions, just in passing, to his butlers, he's like, you know what? I feel like that this company, I should name this company, call it Prudy. Yeah, Prudy. Prudii with an umlaut over the U, because why not? That sounds right. That sounds something obnoxious. He's like, okay, I'm going to try and short sell Prudy. And he looks at his butlers, who've been talking about stocks for many months now, and they don't bat an eyelash. and he sees them, write it down. And he, as they're folding over their notepad, he just sees two words scrawled in their little notebook: Crash Prudy. He's straining his eyes, trying to get a look at that notepad without looking too conspicuous. And when they make eye contact with him, he kind of like looks away. And then he does not, in fact, short sell Prudy. He doesn't mention it to anyone else in the office. He doesn't tell anyone. He mentions it to not another single soul in existence that he wants to short sell Prudy, and he in fact doesn't. And then he keeps an eagle eye on the news. With every free moment he has, he's got the news on in the background during meetings. He's because he's got like a giant TV screen in his business room. Because why wouldn't you? He's listening to the business radio. On the drive home, he's listening to the radio, and he comes home, and his butlers, surprise, surprise, they're not home. And in fact, they're not home for several hours. And he spends the whole rest of the day watching the news, listening to the news radio, keeping on top of finger on the pulse of stock trends with no change. And in the morning, the owner and CEO of Prudy was found hanging themselves in their closet. No signs of foul play. It was believed to be a suicide. There's even a suicide note written in their handwriting, saying that they just couldn't handle the stress of their position, and that they're handing the reins over to the vice director, who is substantially less competent than they are. And after the death of the CEO, stock plummets. It's a quarter of what it was. Just within the span of 24 hours, it drops to a quarter of what it used to be. And it is at this moment that Todd starts to put two and two together. His butler assassins are using some sort of means, most likely assassination, sabotage, espionage tactics, to ensure that all of his business ventures are victorious. And then he puts two and two together, and he's like, these are some dangerous people to have who are murdering on his behalf just so that he stays successful. And he decides that he is not comfortable with that. And he approaches both of them, and he says, I'm very thankful for your services, but I think I'm going to pursue a different type of career. I'm going to sell my father's assets, and I'm going to dismiss both of you. I will give you both glowing reviews. You can work anywhere you want in the world with my name attached to it, but you can't continue working here. I'm selling this place. Thank you for your service. Have a good life. And the two butlers, they don't leave. They're not stubborn about it. They don't say a word about it. They just sort of tilt their heads, blink a few times, and go back to cleaning. He's like, no, guys, you don't understand. You're dismissed. Not going to pay you anymore. And they turn to him and they say, even if you don't pay us, we will continue to work for you. He's like, no, you're fired. Get out of my house. Get out of my mansion. I'm selling this mansion anyway. Get out. They're like, I'm sorry, sir. We can't not work for you. We have an obligation. An obligation to what? Get out of my house. I'll call the authorities. And they're like, no, you won't. And he is like, believe me, I will call the cops and they will arrest you for trespassing. You're fired. Get out. And they look at him and they say, no. He's like, well, fine. Do whatever you want, but it's going to be real cramped in my one-bedroom apartment because I'm moving to New York. And they turn to him and they say, you're not selling the house. He's like, what do you want about? Shut up. So he reaches over to the phone, and he dials 911 on those old rotary phones. Click, click, click. And 911, and he waits to hear the dial tone. There's no dial tone. He looks at the phone, appears to be fine. And he looks at the wire, appears to be fine. And he follows the wire, which is sort of like stapled in the crease between the carpet and the wall so as to not look conspicuous but stay firmly in place. And he follows that. And you see there's a very precise chunk of cable about 2 inches thick that have just been sliced out. Keep in mind, he said they were fired like a minute ago, less than a minute ago, 2 minutes ago max. And yet, mysteriously, phones that were working just fine before are slashed, and he can't make any outgoing phone calls. And he's like, hey, what's going on here? Why did you cut the phone lines? When did you have time to cut the phone lines? How did you know you were going to need to cut the phone lines? What is going on? And he starts freaking out. But these two butlers, they just refuse to give an inch. They say nothing. They just say, if you'll excuse me, sir, we have cleaning to do. He's freaking out. And he gets really pissed off, and he grabs one of the vases, this Ming Dynasty vase worth tens of thousands of dollars. He picks it up, and he friggin' just chucks it at one of these butlers. What did I say their names were? I don't know what their names were before, but let's go with Salt and Vinegar. Yeah. No, let's not Salt and Vinegar. Let's go with Alcohol and Vinegar. Fuck yeah. He sees the two twins, Alcohol and Vinegar, which I've decided that their names are based off of cleaning supplies that I have next to my desk here. Because fuck it, why not? He goes, he picks up the vase and he chucks it at Alcohol, and the vase goes hurtling through the air, and Alcohol draws his rapier, extends it, and the vase lands on the rapier, and the angle of the blade causes the falling vase to follow the parabolic arc in its descent all the way down as it glides down the rapier down to the hilt, where Alcohol grabs the vase by the base, sheathes his rapier, and gently sets the vase back down. And he goes, "You shouldn't do that, sir. Those vases are hard to replace. The Ming Dynasty, you know, one of a kind." And Todd starts to absolutely lose his shit. And he's like, "Get out of my house!" And he starts he picks up a chair and throws it at them. And he throws it this time opposite of Alcohol and Vinegar. And as he throws it against the wall, expecting it to shatter on the wall, there's like this blur of movement and this whoosh of air beside him. And Alcohol and Vinegar appear right next to the table. They grab it in midair and gently set it down and scoops that table back into place. They're like, "Sir, we must insist that you stop throwing property around. We can't possibly catch them all." He goes, "What was that? The fuck just happened? You just move at like the speed of sound across my living room? How did you do that? What's going on?" They're like, "There are many things that we do that you do not understand, nor do you need to understand." And he goes, "Man, fuck you guys. I'm leaving. I'm out of this house. Goodbye." And then he tries to leave this mansion. And he sees the Alcohol and Vinegar just sort of vanish behind him. He goes, maybe they finally got some sense in them. And he starts marching out the front door. Goes to the front door, turns knob, and it's locked. But he's on the inside. So he sees that the lock has been turned. He's like, okay, no big deal. And he grabs the deadbolt and twists it unlocked, and the deadbolt comes off. And he looks at it, and the screw holding the deadbolt in place has been cleanly cut in half. And he slowly turns around, deadbolt in hand, and there's Alcohol and Vinegar. And they gently pluck the lock from his hands and set it back into place. So it looks like it was never cut. He's like, "We must keep the place looking clean, and you must remain in this house." And he goes, "How did you do that? I didn't see you. I was walking in a straight line towards this door. I never saw you move. How did you do this?" They're like, "There are things you do not understand, Todd." And he goes, "Let me out of this goddamn mansion." They're like, "I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Todd." So Todd looks at one of these giant open windows, and he just takes this running start and leaps into the air, jumps headfirst into the window. Alcohol and Vinegar grab him by the chest and the ankles, catching him midair and set him down. They go, "You seem stressed. Maybe you should, you'd be more relaxed if you sat on the couch and watched some TV." And they grab him by the arms and they drag him, kicking and screaming and flailing around, over to the couch. They reach into the creases between the cushions and pull out these leather straps with buckles on them. They strap his chest in, buckle it, lock the buckle, and then they go, "We really must get back to cleaning the mansion. You sit tight here." And then they pull the straps nice and tight across his chest so he can't wiggle out. So, and then they turn the TV on for him so he can watch the news. And he tries to like wiggle free, but it's so tight he doesn't really have a full range of movement. And they're gone for minutes and minutes and minutes on end. And he just cannot get free. And he realizes there's no way he's getting out of these straps without suffering some sort of bodily injury, because his hands are strapped in right next to his shoulders, and they're straps around his in an X across his chest, and the top two straps that form the X up top are wrapped around his wrists, and he is just stuck. So he's like, "There's no way I'm getting out of here without suffering some sort of injury." So he like tries to pull his wrist down, making his hand as small as possible, like trying to bend his thumb joint and his pinky joint as close together as possible, but it's just too tight. He's starting to lose circulation in his hands because they're just way too tight. And so he just starts to yank and yank and yank. And either this leather strap is going to break, its attachment point is going to break, or his hand is going to break. And he struggles and he struggles and he starts working up a sweat. The sweat starts to form on his hand and wrist. And it is, after several minutes of struggling, there's just barely enough lubrication for him to squeeze his hand through. Once he gets one hand through, he uses his right hand to help squeeze his left hand out. His hands are free. Okay, there's still an X across his chest. Doesn't have the lock for the buckle. Doesn't need it. He squeezes one strap over his head, and he just sort of wiggles through out of this strap mechanism. And he's like, "Okay, I can't make any noise, because if they hear me, they'll come get me and strap me back in. I need to get the fuck out quietly." So he starts tiptoeing as quietly and as slowly as he can. And the closest door to him is the cellar. And he walks over to the basement door, tries to open it. Of course it's locked. Why wouldn't it be? So then he tries to tiptoe over to the kitchen and peeks around the corner. Nope, the twins are in the kitchen washing the dishes. So he's like, "Okay, can't go there." So then he tiptoes upstairs, and he is putting each foot on each step as gingerly as he can to make sure that there is absolutely no creak. He gets all the way to the top step before he makes the slightest of creaks. There's a blur of movement and a whoosh of air, and the butlers are there in front of him, Alcohol and Vinegar, just standing there at the top of the stairs, smiling at him. They're going somewhere, sir?" Like, "Yeah, I'm taking you with me." And then he reaches over and he grabs Alcohol, who is still like standing upright, like one hand in front, one hand behind, and he just bear grabs him and just rushes over to the staircase, leaps into the air, and tries to take Alcohol with him. And he starts and Alcohol doesn't resist at all. He allows himself to be thrown overboard. There's a blur of movement and a whoosh of air, and Vinegar is there at the bottom with his hands outstretched. He's falling down this like 15-foot drop, and Vinegar, with his arms outstretched, gently catches both of them after a 15-foot fall. Two grown-ass men just, as gently as a feather, lowers them back down. And Todd looks over at Alcohol, who spent the entire fall in the exact same position, one hand out in front, one hand behind. His suit and tie isn't even disturbed. He's like, "Let me out!" They're like, "I'm afraid we can't let you leave, sir." He's like, "Why?" "I'm afraid we can't tell you that." "Ah!" So Todd pulls out a penknife, like a little like a for anyone not familiar with the term, it's just uh, folding knife that's very long and very thin. That's similar dimensions as a pen, but no, it's not a pen hidden in. It's not a knife hidden in a pen. It's just roughly the same dimensions. Anyway, he takes out this pen knife out of his pocket, flips it open, and tries to jab it at his own throat. And blur movement and a whoosh of air, hands on his wrists. And he tries and he tries. He gets both hands in on the action, trying to stab himself in his own throat. But with one hand, alcohol is stopping him from stabbing himself in the throat. And he notices that alcohol is putting all of his strength, pulling his arms towards his own body to stop Todd from plunging this knife in. So he does that same move that every older brother has pulled when they're playing tug of war with their little brother, where he suddenly releases the pressure and lets his hand go lax. So with the full strength of this alcohol's one arm suddenly contracting his arm, it is actually in a perfect position to reach out and slash alcohol in the throat, and he nails him right in the carotid. You can see the vein pulsating as the penknife pierces through his throat. And with a he raises up the knife, causing this massive arterial spray to splash on top of him. And he goes, "Get the fuck out of my house!" And you see, despite the arterial spray and losing blood at high volume, you see alcohol just pull out a handkerchief, put some pressure on the wound, and be like, "You shouldn't have done that." Vinegar. And you see Vinegar just vanish in a blur of movement. And then he doesn't even see it happen. It's so fast he doesn't even feel it until a moment after it happens. Both of his kneecaps shatter. His legs bend backwards. And he collapses to the ground in agony. And he goes, "Ah, you son of a bitch! Why? Why? Let me go! Let me go!" He's like, "You've made a mess, sir. More work for us. But don't worry. It's our job to clean up after you." He goes, "Let me go!" And while alcohol goes to the kitchen to find the first aid kit to dress his wound, Vinegar grabs the broken-legged Todd back into the living room and straps him back onto the couch. He sets his legs in place, and he says, "Don't worry, there'll be a doctor here shortly." Ding dong! And he's like, "Who is that?" "It's the doctor." "How did they get here so fast?" Todd is losing his shit at this point, and he sees a doctor walk in. He doesn't see them walk in. He's in the living room there at the entrance, and the doctor pulls out a scalpel and cuts out his pant leg, cuts open the skin, and performs knee surgery right then and there, pulling out all the broken shards of knee and stitching and putting in a replacement, a perfectly fitted titanium knee replacement, like just out of his travel bag that he just brought with him a handful of seconds after it was needed. And he does this intensive surgery with no anesthetic right there in the living room, getting blood everywhere. And they eventually replace the knee, sew it back up, bandage the wound, and then they take Todd out, who passed out from the pain halfway through, and they put him in bed, and they spend the rest of the evening trying to get the blood out of the carpet and out of the couch. Todd wakes up in bed. He goes, "They're never going to let me leave. They broke my legs just to keep me here. Why? Why?" He reaches for the phone in his room, no signal, and he spends several weeks in that bed recovering from his knee injury, not reporting to work. Presumably, people are trying to reach him, but they cannot reach him. Um, and after he just waits and waits, lying in bed with nothing but his thoughts, wondering how or why these butlers came to be. And as the butlers, alcohol and vinegar, come to check in on him one day, he goes, "If I ordered you to kill someone, would you do it?" And they say, "Of course. It is our job. Whatever you need, sir. We are at your service, whether you like it or not." And he goes, "So you will kill anyone on this earth that I order to you?" And they say, "Sir, we have the means to kill anyone we need to, including the president. Just say the name." And he goes, "Swear to me that you will kill whoever I tell you to. It is done. I want you to kill me." "But sir, we could never." "You said you'd kill anyone. Kill me!" And they look at each other, and they look like they're trying to refuse. They're like, "We can't do that, sir." And they motion to leave, and they get several steps away until they stop mid stride. They're stopped so forcefully it almost trips them up, and they are without moving, paralyzed in the air. They are spun around 180 degrees by some mysterious force. They are compelled to walk back towards him. They go, "You don't realize what you've done." He goes, "I know exactly what I've done. You can't say no. Because you, neither of you, are human. And you are under some sort of spell to keep me comfortable, to keep me successful, to eliminate anyone and anything who gets in my way. Was it my father?" And they both quietly nod. He goes, "So he bound you two ghosts, two undead spirits, to serve me until the end of my days." They nod their heads. "And since you have to do whatever I asked you to, you are now required to kill me." They nod their heads as they draw their rapiers. He goes, "So what happens when I die?" And they say, "We move on to the afterlife. North or south, we don't entirely know. Perhaps we'll just wander the earth as restless spirits. I guess we'll find out together." And Todd nods and he goes, "It's better this way. It's better that you be free. It's better that I be free. No one should have to live like this. And no one should have to have an afterlife like this. This is the way." They say, "Do you have any last words?" And he goes, "Yeah. If you see my father in the afterlife, tell him to go fuck himself." And they, alcohol and vinegar both chuckle slightly, raise their rapiers, and plunge them into Todd's heart. There's a brief moment of as the pain sets in, but he grits his teeth and bears it. Blood trickles out of his mouth as he just does his best to lay still and let it happen. His eyes, still open, glaze over as he falls still. And the moment his soul leaves his body, alcohol and vinegar fade away, never to be seen again. The end.
Pack up your sin and go to the devil in Hades. You'll meet the finest